The glass spire of the Unity complex pierced the amber sky of Meridian City, its crystalline facets reflecting both human skyscrapers and the organic architecture of the Etherean settlements. Inside, Talon Reed adjusted his formal diplomatic attire, a standard Navy suit that felt too tight around his neck. 6 years in the Interspecies Relations Corps, and he still hadn't gotten used to the uniforms. "Remember Ambassador Reed," his superior director Harlow whispered beside him. "The Ethereans consider physical contact sacred. Their boundaries are paramount to these negotiations." Talon nodded, trying to focus on the briefing rather than the fatigue from endless preparation sessions. "I understand, Director. No contact, maintain 3 feet of distance, and avoid prolonged eye contact with their council members." The doors to the chamber parted, revealing a delegation of Ethereans. Their slender forms moved with fluid grace, skin tones ranging from pale lavender to deep amethyst. Talon had studied their physiology extensively, but textbooks failed to capture their ethereal presence. The lead negotiator, introduced as Council Member Nieriavel, stepped forward. Her skin was the color of twilight, with luminescent patterns that seemed to pulse with her breathing. "Ambassador Reed," she spoke, her voice musical yet formal. "The Council of Etheria welcomes you to these continued discussions of the Meridian Accords." Talon bowed his head slightly the appropriate greeting. "Council Member Nieriavel, Earth's diplomatic corps extends gratitude for your willingness to negotiate." The meeting proceeded with meticulous precision. 2 hours of careful language, proposed amendments to trade routes, discussions of shared airspace in the outer colonies. Talon found himself mesmerized by Nieriavel's eloquence and the subtle shifts of light beneath. Her skin that seemed to emphasize her points. When they called for a brief recess, Talon gathered his tablets, mind racing through the next talking points. He turned too quickly, not noticing Nieriavel had approached to examine the holographic map still projected between them. Time slowed as his hand brushed against hers, momentary contact, skin against skin. The shock of it froze them both. He felt something like an electric current pass between them, warm and strange. The Etherean delegation gasped collectively. Director Harlow's face went pale. "Council member, I deeply apologize," Talon stammered, horrified at his carelessness. It was entirely unintentional. The room fell silent. In Etherean culture, uninvited touch was not merely rude. It was a profound violation. Diplomats had been permanently barred from negotiations for less. Centuries of fragile peace could unravel from such a transgression, but Nieriavel's reaction was unexpected. Her luminescent patterns flared briefly, pulsing from violet to indigo before settling. Rather than outrage, her silver eyes held curiosity.
"Ambassador Reed,"
she said, her voice lower than before. The other Ethereans watched, clearly confused by her calm. "An accident, certainly," yes, he confirmed, relief flooding through him. "I would never intentionally meet me at the Celestial Gardens," she whispered, so quietly only he could hear. "Tonight, after the second moonrise, there is something you should understand about what just happened." Before he could respond, she turned to the delegation. "We shall consider this an educational opportunity," she announced formally. "The ambassador will receive proper instruction on Etherean protocols before our next session." The meeting resumed, but Talon could barely concentrate. The momentary touch lingered like a phantom sensation on his skin. More puzzling was Nieriavel's invitation. Ethereans rarely engaged with humans outside official capacity, and never alone. As the session concluded, Nieriavel caught his gaze briefly. A subtle nod confirming her invitation stood. Against all diplomatic protocol and common sense, Talon knew he would go to the gardens. Something in that fleeting contact had awakened a curiosity he couldn't ignore. A connection that transcended the careful distance between their worlds. The Celestial Gardens floated on massive anti-gravity platforms at the edge of the Etherean district, suspended between worlds both literally and figuratively. Talon arrived as the second moon crested the horizon, its pale blue light casting ethereal shadows through the bioluminescent foliage. He'd changed into civilian clothes, a simple tunic and pants, hoping to attract less attention. The gardens were nearly empty, most visitors having departed after sunset. Only a few Ethereans remained, their purple skin glowing softly in meditation pods. Talon felt distinctly out of place, the only human in a space designed for beings who communed with energy rather than words. "You came." Nerivale's voice emerged from behind a curtain of cascading light flowers. She had exchanged her formal council robes for a flowing garment that shifted colors with her movements. "I wasn't certain you would." "I had to," Talon replied, maintaining careful distance. "For diplomatic reasons, of course. I need to understand the protocols I violated." A smile flickered across her face, an unexpectedly human expression. "Is that the only reason?" The question hung between them. Talon considered lying, but found himself answering truthfully. "No, I felt something when we touched. Something I can't explain." Nerivale nodded, her luminescent patterns brightening. "What you felt was the beginning of resonance." She gestured for him to follow her deeper into the gardens. For Ethereans, physical contact is not merely the touching of flesh, but the communion of energies. They passed through an archway of living crystal, entering a secluded grotto where floating spheres of light illuminated a small reflecting pool. "Our people evolved from beings of partial energy," she explained, kneeling beside the pool. "Touch is sacred because it allows our energies to mingle, to know one another in ways beyond words. This is why we guard it so carefully, not from prudishness, as humans often assume." Talon sat across from her, fascinated. "Then why are you sharing this with me? I'm just another diplomat who made a cultural mistake." "Because when our hands touched," Nerivale said softly, "your energy responded to mine. This is unprecedented. Humans typically feel nothing beyond physical sensation." She extended her hand, hovering at inches from the water's surface. The liquid began to glow, responding to her presence without contact. "This is how we experience our world," she continued. "Everything contains energy we can sense and sometimes influence, but what happened between us was different. Your energy reached for mine like an Etherean's would." Talon stared at her hand, then at the glowing water. "I don't understand. I'm fully human. Perhaps humanity has more potential than either of our species recognized." She looked up at him, silver eyes reflecting the ambient light. "Would you like to learn more?" Every diplomatic protocol warned against personal involvement with other species. His career, the negotiations, the fragile peace between their peoples all could be jeopardized. Yet something deeper than curiosity pulled at him. "Yes," he said simply. Nerivale stood, extending her hand. "Then follow me. But understand from this moment, we walk a path between worlds. There are those on both sides who would see us fail." Talon hesitated only briefly before rising to meet her. "I've spent my career translating between worlds. I'm not afraid of boundaries." "You should be," she whispered, a mixture of warning and invitation in her voice. "Because once crossed, they cannot be rebuilt in quite the same way." She led him through hidden passageways into the heart of the Etherean district, where few humans had ever been welcomed. Crystal spires housed communal living spaces, and between them, markets and gathering places hummed with quiet activity. Ethereans moved with fluid grace, their skin tones creating a living mosaic of purple hues. Many stopped to stare at the human in their midst, some with curiosity, others with clear disapproval. "The communion temple," Nerivale explained, guiding him toward a spiral structure that seemed to be made of frozen light. "The center of our spiritual practice." Inside, Ethereans stood in concentric circles, their hands extended toward one another without touching. The air between them shimmered with visible energy, connecting them in luminous threads of light. "They share themselves," she whispered. "Thoughts, emotions, memories, flowing freely between them. Complete honesty, complete vulnerability." Talon watched, mesmerized. "It's beautiful and terrifying," Nerivale added. "To be known so completely leaves nowhere to hide." She turned to face him, eyes intense. "This is what you felt the beginning of, Ambassador. Not just physical contact, but the first echo of souls recognizing one another." An elderly Etherean approached them, his deep violet skin etched with patterns that spoke of great age. He spoke rapidly to Nerivale in the Etherean language, gesturing toward Talon with obvious concern. "Elder Vexamore believes I am being reckless," she translated, a defiant edge to her voice. Perhaps I am. But I've spent my life studying human culture, wondering if true understanding between our species is possible. She looked at Talon with unexpected vulnerability. The resonance we shared suggests it might be. The elder departed with clear disapproval, leaving them alone in a corner of the temple. You risk much by bringing me here, Talon observed. As do you by coming, she countered. Your superiors would not approve of unsanctioned cultural exchange, especially with the lead negotiator. Their eyes met, the implication clear. Whatever was happening between them transcended diplomatic relations and ventured into uncharted territory personally, culturally, perhaps even historically. Tomorrow, we return to being diplomat and council member, Niriavel said, her voice steadying with resolve. But tonight, I am simply Neri, and you are simply Talon. Two beings seeking to understand what lies between our worlds. In that moment, surrounded by the communion of a culture not his own, Talon felt something shift within him, a willingness to explore not just Etherean customs, but the unexpected connection forming between himself and this remarkable being whose very existence challenged everything he thought he knew about the universe and his place within it. 3 weeks passed in a double life. By day, Ambassador Reed and Council Member Nerivel engaged in meticulous negotiations, maintaining perfect professional distance. By night, Talon and Neri explored the boundaries between their species and themselves. Tonight, they met in an abandoned observatory at the edge of the neutral zone, a place belonging to neither human nor Etherean territory. Ancient telescopes pointed skyward, relics from before either civilization could travel among the stars they once only observed. Your heart rate increases when I enter a room, Neri said, her voice playful as she circled the old astronomical instruments. Even during negotiations, the other Ethereans can sense it, though they don't know it's directed at me. Talon leaned against a star chart table. Is that why Elder Vexamore keeps glaring at me? Partly. He also believes I'm being seduced by human individualism. Her luminescent patterns rippled with amusement, a dangerous corruption of our collective harmony. And are you? Talon asked, suddenly serious. Being corrupted? Neri approached him, close enough that he could feel the subtle warmth that always radiated from her skin. Perhaps I'm evolving. The boundary between corruption and growth has always been subjective. Over their secret meetings, she had taught him rudimentary energy sensing techniques Ethereans learned as children. To his surprise, he had some minimal ability, enough to feel the gentle current of her presence even with his eyes closed. Today's negotiation session was tense, he said, changing the subject. The territorial disputes in the outer colonies are becoming a flashpoint. Politics, Neri sighed, always reducing complex realities to simple lines on maps. She extended her hand, stopping inches from his chest. May I? He nodded, having learned that Ethereans always requested permission for energy work. Her palm hovered over his heart, not touching but close enough that he could feel the connection forming between them. A tingling sensation that had become familiar, yet never ceased to amaze him. Your energy is changing, she observed. Becoming more responsive? More... Etherean. Is that possible? Theoretically, no. But here we are. Her silver eyes met his. You're learning to resonate. The space between them seemed charged, a physical manifestation of the boundaries they'd been carefully navigating. In their weeks together, it never actually touched Agenyuri, teaching him the Etherean way of intimacy through energy rather than physical contact. I've been thinking, Talon said carefully, about the first time we touched, about what might happen if we tried again, now that I understand more. Neri's patterns flashed with surprise, then settled into a deeper glow. It would be... intense. More than before. I'm not afraid, he said. Perhaps you should be. But she didn't move away. Instead, she slowly raised her hand toward his. For Ethereans, this level of connection is reserved for those who have committed to a deep bond. It's not casual. Talon held her gaze. I don't take this casually. Their fingertips met, and the world exploded into sensation. Unlike the accidental brush at the negotiation table, This intentional contact opened a flood of awareness. Talon gasped as he felt not just her touch, but glimpses of her emotions' wonder. Fear, desire, all flowing into him as his flowed into her. Her purple skin illuminated brilliantly. Patterns racing across her form like constellations coming alive. They pulled back simultaneously, overwhelmed. That was ... Talon struggled to find words. "I know," Neri whispered, her voice trembling. "I've never experienced resonance so strong, even with my own kind." They looked at their hands, then at each other, the implications settling between them. This wasn't merely cultural exchange anymore. Something profound was happening, something neither human nor Etherean diplomacy had framework to address. Slowly, deliberately, Neri reached for him again. This time, their palms met fully, fingers intertwining. The sensation was less shocking but deeper, a current of connection that seemed to bypass physical reality. Talon felt her consciousness brush against his alien yet familiar, different yet complementary. "I can feel you," he whispered in awe. "Not just your thoughts, but ... you." "This is communion," she explained, her free hand coming to rest against his cheek. "What my people share in the temple, but between us, it's more somehow." As the moons rose outside the observatory dome, they explored this new territory between them, hands tracing patterns on skin that glowed at human touch, energy flowing between species in ways scientific papers would later struggle to explain. Their bodies learned each other's boundaries only to transcend them, creating a language of intimacy neither culture had words to describe. Later, as they lay wrapped in the star charts that had fallen from the walls, Neri traced the outline of Talon's face with fingers that never quite touched his skin. The energy between them connection enough. "The negotiations resume tomorrow," she murmured. "The territorial disputes, the resource allocations, the security protocols, it all seems so arbitrary now."
Oh.
"Not arbitrary," Talon corrected gently. "Just incomplete. They're trying to build peace without understanding. Understanding like this?" She smiled, her patterns glowing softly in the darkness. "Perhaps not exactly like this," he laughed. "But yes, real connection." Neither spoke the dangerous truth hovering between them, that what they had discovered, this resonance, between human and Etherean, could either heal the rifts between their worlds or tear open new ones. Politics had little tolerance for complications, especially those of the heart. For tonight, they simply existed in the space they had created, belonging fully to neither world, but perhaps pointing the way toward a new one. The emergency alert shattered the pre-dawn silence of Talon's apartment. His diplomatic communicator flashed with Director Harlow's priority code, forcing him fully awake. Moments before, he'd been dreaming of silver eyes and purple skin, luminescent in darkness. "Read report to the Unity Complex immediately." Harlow's voice was tight with controlled fury. "There's been a security breach." Talon's stomach dropped. He dressed quickly, mind racing through possibilities. Had their meetings been discovered? Had someone followed them to the observatory? The Unity Complex was in chaos when he arrived. Human security personnel lined the corridors, while a delegation of agitated Ethereans confronted Director Harlow in the main chamber. At their center stood Elder Vexamor, his ancient purple skin pulsing with angry patterns. Nara was nowhere to be seen. "Ambassador Reed," Harlow's voice cut through the tension as Talon entered. "Perhaps you'd like to explain why classified details of our security protocols for the outer colonies have been accessed by unauthorized Etherean sources." Talon froze, genuinely confused. "I don't understand." "What security breach?" Elder Vexamor stepped forward, his silver eyes cold. "Your credentials were used to access restricted files containing human, military positioning throughout our shared territories." He switched to the Etherean language, clearly intending for only the Ethereans to understand. But Talon had learned enough from Neri to catch the words betrayal and manipulation. "That's impossible," Talon protested. "I haven't accessed those files, and my credentials never leave my person, except perhaps during your clandestine meetings with Council Member Nerieval?" Harlow asked, her voice dangerously quiet. The room fell silent. Talon's mind raced. How did they know? We've been monitoring both of you, Harlow continued. Initially out of diplomatic caution, later out of growing concern. Whatever game you've been playing with the council member ends now. It wasn't a game, Talon said, his voice firm despite his internal panic. And Neri would never. Council member Neri Avel has been relieved of her diplomatic position pending investigation, Elder Veximer interrupted. She violated our most sacred protocols by engaging in unsanctioned communion with a human. The word communion sent murmurs through the Aetherian delegation. Talon suddenly understood the full cultural weight of what they had shared. Where is she? He demanded. That is no longer your concern, Ambassador, Harlow replied coldly. Your diplomatic credentials are suspended, effective immediately. Security will escort you to quarters where you will remain while we investigate your level of involvement in this breach. As guards approached, Talon's communicator vibrated with an encrypted message. He glanced down quickly before they could confiscate it. Not what it seems. Trust nothing. Dawn Garden. In the message vanished as quickly as it had appeared, but its implications burned in his mind as security escorted him away. Something much larger than their relationship was unfolding. Something that threatened the fragile peace between their worlds. Hours later, having slipped past the guard stationed outside, his quarters' diplomatic security was never as thorough as military. Talon made his way through maintenance tunnels toward the Dawn Garden. A small meditation space on the east side of the complex, Nura waited in shadow. Her luminescence dimmed to near invisibility. When she saw him, relief washed across her features. You received my message, she whispered. I wasn't certain you would. What's happening, Neri? They're saying my credentials were used to steal security protocols. Because they were, she said grimly. But not by me, and not by you. We're being used, Talon. She pulled up a holographic display showing security logs. Look at the access patterns. They don't match your typical behavior. Someone duplicated your credentials during the negotiations last week. Talon studied the logs. But who would benefit from making it look like I leaked information to you? Those who fear what we represent, she said simply. Our connection threatens the carefully maintained separation between our species. There are factions on both sides who prefer suspicion to understanding. Elder Veximer, among others. My entire life, I've pushed boundaries in the Council, advocated for deeper cultural exchange. They tolerated it until... She gestured between them, until resonance proved possible. That frightens them. Talon absorbed this. We need evidence if we're going to clear our names. I've traced the actual breach to a terminal in the Unity archives, Neri said, but accessing it will be difficult now that we're both under suspicion. Talon thought quickly. Not for both of us together. Your energy manipulation skills combined with my knowledge of human security protocols, we might have a chance. Their eyes met, understanding passing between them without words. They were risking everything, their careers. Possibly their freedom on the chance to uncover the truth. Like you once said, Talon smiled grimly. The boundary between corruption and growth has always been subjective. As they moved through the darkened complex, Talon reflected on how naturally they now worked together. Her abilities to sense energy signatures allowing them to avoid security. His knowledge of the architectural layout guiding their path. They had become something greater than the sum of their parts. The archives terminal sat in an isolated section of the complex. As Neri worked to mask their presence from the energy scanners, Talon bypassed the security protocols, following the digital trail of whoever had framed them. There, he whispered finally. The breach originated here, but was routed through my credentials. The user signature is... Wait, this can't be right. The screen displayed Director Harlow's security code alongside Elder Veximer's authorization. They're working together, Neri breathed, reading over his shoulder. But why? Talon dug deeper, uncovering a hidden communications channel between human military hardliners and Aetherian traditionalists. They're manufacturing a diplomatic crisis. Look, fabricated evidence of Aetherian expansionism in the outer colonies, false reports of human military buildups. They're laying groundwork for conflict. And we became the perfect scapegoats, Neri finished. A human diplomat and Aetherian council member, caught in a scandal that would undermine the peace process. As they downloaded the evidence, alarms suddenly blared throughout the complex. They'd been discovered. "We need to get this to someone who will listen," Talon said urgently. "Someone with enough authority to stop them." "The Planetary Alliance," Neri suggested. "Their headquarters on the orbital station is neutral territory." They fled through the complex as security forces converged. At a maintenance exit, they paused, knowing they would need to separate to improve their chances of escape. "If we survive this," Talon said, taking her hand despite the risk of overwhelming resonance, "there's something you should know." "I already know," she interrupted, her free hand coming to rest over his heart. "I felt it in our communion. No matter what happens, that truth remains." Their connection flared between them, stronger than ever, bright enough that for a moment Talon's skin seemed to glow with the same luminescence as hers. Then they parted, running in opposite directions with half the evidence each, and the silent promised to reunite at the orbital shuttle terminal as Talon disappeared into the night. He carried not just the data that might save the peace between their worlds, but the certainty that something profound had changed within him, something that transcended the diplomatic crisis unfolding around them and pointed toward possibilities neither species had imagined. The Planetary Alliance chamber hummed with tense energy. Representatives from 12 species filled the circular room, their attention fixed on the unexpected witnesses who had requested emergency audience. At the center stood Talon Reed and Neria Vell, their formal attire unable to hide the fatigue of their 3-day escape to reach the orbital station. "These are serious accusations," said High Arbiter Zune, the Silurian mediator whose crystalline form refracted light as she spoke. "You claim that officials from both your governments deliberately sabotaged peace negotiations?" "The evidence is conclusive," Talon replied, activating the holographic display they had assembled. Director Harlow and Elder Vexamore coordinated to create a security crisis, each planning to use it to justify military positioning in the outer colonies. The gathered representatives murmured as data scrolled through the air communication logs, falsified reports, security breaches carefully engineered to implicate Talon and Neri. "What remains unclear," Arbiter Zune continued, "is their motivation. The peace between humans and Aetherians has held for nearly a century." Neri stepped forward, her purple skin glowing softly under the chamber lights. "It is precisely because of that peace that they acted. Prolonged cooperation threatens those who maintain power through separation." She hesitated, then made a decision. Taking Talon's hand in full view of the assembly, she allowed their resonance to manifest visibly a luminous aura forming around their joined hands, his human skin temporarily taking on a faint purple glow while her patterns aligned to match his heartbeat. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even species unfamiliar with Aetherians could sense the profound implications. "What you're witnessing," Neri explained, "something believed impossible resonance between human and Aetherian energy patterns. Our traditionalists fear this represents the dilution of our unique identity. Your militarists fear it suggests vulnerability. They fear understanding," Talon added quietly, "because true understanding makes conflict harder to justify." The Alliance deliberated for hours while Talon and Neri waited, physically exhausted, but drawing strength from each other's presence. Finally, they were summoned back to the chamber. "The Alliance has verified your evidence," Arbiter Zune announced. "Security forces have detained Director Harlow, Elder Vexamore, and their collaborators." However, she paused, her crystalline form shifting to a more somber hue. "The diplomatic damage remains. Trust between your peoples has been severely compromised." "Then let us rebuild it," Neri said, looking not at the Arbiter, but at the assembled representatives. "Not through the old frameworks of careful distance, but through genuine understanding." "What are you proposing, Council Member?" asked the human representative, a woman who had replaced Harlow as Earth's interim diplomatic chief. Talon stepped forward. "A new approach to human-Aetherian relations. One based on cultural exchange rather than mere political accommodation." They outlined their vision educational programs allowing humans to learn Aetherian energy techniques, cultural immersion centers, scientific collaborations studying the resonance phenomenon they had discovered. Most radically, They proposed mixed communities in the disputed outer colonies, where humans and Etherians would live together rather than in separate enclaves. Ambitious, the Etherian Interim Council leader commented when they finished. Perhaps naively so. Perhaps, Neri acknowledged. But we've seen firsthand what becomes possible when we move beyond our assumptions about one another. And you too? The human representative asked, her gaze moving between them. What role do you envision for yourselves in this experiment? Talon and Neri exchanged glances, a private communication passing between them in the subtle language they had developed. We request assignment as joint ambassadors to the first mixed colony, Talon said, not representing our respective worlds to each other, but representing a new possibility to both. The debate extended late into the night cycle. Some representatives argued the proposal was too radical. Others suggested it didn't go far enough. Through it all, Talon and Neri stood together, their presence itself a testament to the integration they advocated. 3 months later, the settlement of Nova Resonance received its first inhabitants, 500 humans and 300 Etherians, who had volunteered for the experimental colony. Located on a plateau overlooking the azure seas of Harmony, the fourth planet in the disputed Alara system, its architecture blended human functionality with Etherian organic design. Talon stood on the balcony of the administration building, watching newcomers arrive. Beside him, Neri observed with quiet satisfaction. They said it wouldn't work, Talon remarked, nodding toward a group of human children being taught basic energy sensing by an elderly Etherian. 6 conflicts predicted in the first month, and yet here we are. There have been tensions, Neri reminded him, her hand finding his with the easy familiarity they now shared. The resonance phenomenon doesn't manifest for everyone, as it did for us. No, he agreed. But understanding doesn't require resonance, just willingness. Their attention turned to the horizon, where construction had begun on the colony's communion temple. Unlike traditional Etherian designs, this one incorporated spaces where humans could observe and gradually learn the energy practices, with dedicated areas where those who developed sensitivity could participate. I received a message from the Alliance this morning, Neri said. The physiological studies are showing changes in some of the humans who've been practicing energy work. Regularly subtle alterations in their neurological patterns, and the Etherians. Similar adaptations? Our scientists are fascinated. They believe we're witnessing the first stages of coevolution, species adapting to each other's presence. Talon smiled. I still remember when you whispered to me at that first diplomatic meeting. Did you know then what might be possible? I hoped, she admitted, her patterns shimmering with emotion. I'd spent years studying human culture, sensing there was more potential for connection than either side acknowledged. But I never imagined ... this. She gestured to their joined hands, where their resonance flowed freely between them. No longer overwhelming, but a constant, harmonious exchange. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the colony. In the central plaza, humans and Etherians gathered for the evening meal, a daily ritual that had evolved to honor both cultures. Music drifted upward, an improvised collaboration between human instruments and Etherian harmonic resonators. You know, Talon said thoughtfully, when I accidentally touched you that day, I was terrified I'd caused a diplomatic incident. You did? Neri laughed, her silver eyes bright with amusement. Just not the kind anyone expected. As darkness fell, the bioluminescent plants integrated throughout the colony began to glow, complemented by subtle human lighting systems. The effect was neither fully Etherian nor human, but something new, a visual representation of the harmony they were building. Talon pulled Neri close, their resonance deepening with proximity. What had once been overwhelming had become their natural stata, constant exchange of energy, emotion, and understanding that transcended the limitations of their separate biologies. The next group of scientists arrives tomorrow, he murmured against her hair. They want to study our resonance patterns again. Let them study, she replied, her patterns pulsing in the rhythm he recognized as contentment. Every discovery brings our worlds closer together. Below them, in the growing community that represented the future they had risked everything to create, humans and Etherians continued the delicate, beautiful work of learning each other's ways. It wasn't always easy, and the path forward wasn't always clear. but in the gentle glow of resonance that surrounded the colony's first ambassadors. There was unmistakable proof that boundaries existed only until someone dared to reach across them.